Welcome, welcome, welcome to the State of Civility Summit Africa. The State of Civility Summit Africa. We are super excited to bring you the new African narrative. I'm Professor Vernet A. Joseph, the host of Civility360, along with my good friend and host, World Civility Leader, Global World Civility Leader, Sir Clyde Rivers. How are you today, my friend?
Professor Burnett, I am doing fantastic today. Thank you. I'm looking forward to this amazing show.
Absolutely. Listen, folks, you already know what time it is. When Civility360 hosts something, you know that we are on a mission. And that mission is to put civility, influence, and action as a deliverable to you. Today, we have the opportunity to have world leaders from around the globe on with us as we speak to the State of Civility Summit Africa. Now we're talking about a new African narrative, the Africa that you've known or that you've watched on television or in documentaries. There's a new Africa and a new African narrative that we are bringing to the table. So I hope that you are ready, and I challenge you to get your pens, get your pads, get your digital device out, and begin to take notes because we are about to go somewhere. Oh, man. Ambassador Rivers, Sir Clyde Rivers, all day we have had civility shows. And our endeavor is to be talking about civility all the time and everywhere. How do you feel about seeing the vision of I Change Nations, the vision of civility taking root and form around the globe?
You know what, Dr. Burnett, it's amazing when God gives you an assignment, you have no idea when the date of actually usage begins. I would have never thought in my lifetime that during the midst of a pandemic, God would thrust world civility on the forefront. I would never imagine, and I'm telling you, it's his time, his season for a new narrative, and we have civility is needed in every corner of the world today, and God has raised us up, and we're humbled to do this: seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly before our God.
My. You know, as we continue to talk about this, one of the biggest things that comes to my heart and mind is helping people to understand that civility is the engine to our world. Civility is the engine to our world. And when we say that, what do we mean by that? There is not an industry on the planet that does not need civility. There is not a profession on the planet that does not need civility. So with that said, we are endeavoring to bring you civility in action, not just in word, but also in deed. We have some dynamic leaders, world leaders, who are bringing initiatives all across the globe. And it does my heart extremely well to see how God has assembled these people together to make a change and a difference in our society today. Before we get started, Sir Clyde Rivers, I would like to talk about those whom we will have actually on the summit. And if we could briefly, I want to start off with Dr. Louisa Akaiso. Let's talk about this young lady that we will be bringing to the scene here shortly.
Dr. Louisa Akaiso, we just honored her with an honorary doctorate from our United Graduate College of Seminary International. And you know, when you've honored the presidents of the world, the top people of the world, you just don't bring anyone in for that assignment. Dr. Louisa Akaiso is the pioneer of social media civility TV for us. She has led the way for us. She's a phenomenal voice. She's a great lady, and we are so honored to have and she's one of the master civility leaders in the world, and she's on our show today.
This is what we're talking about, folks. We're not just bringing anyone to the stage. Every person that comes on our State of Civility summits are masters in their own right. They're world leaders that are making a big difference and a big change, not only in their community, but communities abroad. Let's talk about Ambassador Matthias Mottola.
This man is truly one of the great voices on the continent of Africa and the world. He is a genius. He is a professor, a vice chancellor at our United Graduate College and Seminary in Mozambique. And when you hear this young man speak, you will understand why he has his credentials. So here it is. We stop waiting for people to be 200 years old to put a title on them.
That's right.
This man has earned it all. Matthias is one of the great voices of our world today. He is the African Civility Educator of the Year 2020. And when you hear him, it'll all doubts gone.
All doubts gone. When I talk about we are putting all gas on civility and no brakes, you better believe it, folks. Okay, let's talk about a young man by the name of Dr. Charles Tercheret.
Dr. Charles, the guy came to me with the concept of the new African conversation. And I thought about it. I said, you're the first one to ever bring a new conversation to Africa, because Africa normally responds. It's always fighting its way out of a bag. And I said, no. There's a new conversation. And Dr. Charles he's the creator of a trilogy education narrative. And I'm sure he'll share with us about that. He's a phenomenal new world leader, Dr. Charles Tercheret.
Wow. Okay, as we continue on, we will have Professor Jared Akama that will join the stage. Talk to us a little bit, sir.
Jared Akama is just brilliant. He is one of the great professors. He's a vice chancellor liaison for our United Graduate College and Seminary. Jared Akama he walks with the spirit of wisdom, and he's our 2020 Civility Icon of the Year. As a matter of fact, I forgot to say something about Luisa Kaizo. Luisa Kaizo is our 2020 African Woman of the Year, a Civility Icon. And I couldn't forget that. But Jared Akama is our guy for Kenya, and he's the walking epitome of wisdom and civility.
Now, I know we may not have Representative or Congressman Simon Karu on the line today. I know that he is experiencing some bereavement at this time, but he may actually show up. But tell the listening and the viewing audience a little bit about Congressman Simon Karu.
Congressman Simon Karu was our 2019 Africa Civility Person of the Year. This young man, I've not seen a faith like his. He is probably one of the most excellent people I know in the world. And he made a decision to enter into politics so he could make a difference. And this young man, Dr. Simon Karu, will make a difference in this world.
Wow. As we continue on, talk to us about Ambassador Tony Jaja.
Tony Jaja is a machine. This guy is single-handedly bringing civility to Africa. Everywhere you go, Tony Jaja's been there. And the guy is a leading voice for civility on the continent of Africa, and he's worked with me for years. Excellent spirit, just a phenomenal man, and we're honored to have Ambassador Tony Jaja with us.
Absolutely. And then last but surely not least, we have Dr. Estelle Collins. Talk to us about Dr. Estelle.
All I can think of is royalty personification.
Mm.
This is a man out of Guyana. I think he is the definition of a statesman. He is one of the most excellent spirit. I've never seen a politician like this man in my life. He's just in a class all by himself. Estelle
Wow.
Collins.
Wow,
Yes.
wow, wow, wow. Listen, folks, I don't want to belabor the time, but we wanted to let you know who will be on the line for the State of Civility Summit Africa. I want to start off with Dr. Louisa and bring her in and let her share some of her wisdom. Listen, when I talk about civilized presence, I don't think you guys are ready for Dr. Louisa. Let's bring her to the stage. Dr. Louisa, how are you today?
I am very well, thank you. Let me do the victory dance first of all.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, indeed. We are super excited to have you on. Let me say congratulations to you, Dr. Louisa Kaiser. It is phenomenal to have you on with us today. And I know that there's so much wisdom that you are going to share with our listening as well as viewing audience. Before I get started, I know we didn't say this in the beginning. Let us know what city, what state, what country, what region, what continent that you are chiming in from. We want to hear from you. If you have questions that you would like us to answer, please make sure that you put them in the chat and we will be sure to do that. Please, ma'am, please, sir, if you desire to, you can share this, start a watch party with this, whatever works for you, we want you to do. We are going somewhere today and we are bringing solutions to the problems around the world. Now, with that said, Dr. Louisa, let me ask you this question. What does the new Africa look like after this pandemic? Share with us, please.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Burnett, for this question. I think is so timely that we are doing this today. And thank you, Dr. Rivas, of course, for inviting me to be part of this great summit with amazing leaders from all over the world. I'm excited to be here. And so going back to your question, after the pandemic, I think we're going to see a much more prepared Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll explain what I mean by that. Because Africa, originally does not believe in telecommunity, because they don't have sufficient technological infrastructure. They have not really had that support system in the past. And so COVID-19 just kind of jumped in. So being prepared has not been on every level in Africa. That's what I mean.
Mm.
People in the government level have been prepared, but don't forget that the bulk of the tasks in Africa, for example, the jobs were manual. And those manual labor or manual jobs, is really hard for you to mechanize them. So this means that, some of those jobs are now taken away from these people. Because if we all have to come online, then it's kind of difficult for the people in Africa. So we're going to be looking at a more realistic Africa after the pandemic. People in Africa have always thought that their problems are maybe centered in the Western world. But at this time, with COVID-19 transcending to them, it's like a rude awakening that we need to stay prepared. Even if you are not doing this before, you have to. You have to come online. You have to get the right resources. You have to get yourself heard. So that's what Africa is going to look like after the pandemic. Over to you.
Wow. Wow. Yes, I like this. Now, how do we bring about a change in mindset when it comes to tribalism? How do we eradicate tribalism in Africa?
Thank you so much for that question. Of course, that's another great question. And I love to talk about this because the continent of Africa cannot be what it is today without the tribes. different tribes make up Africa. So, for example, some countries have 50 tribes. Nigeria has over 300 tribes. These tribes have become more pronounced and resonant as a result of the competition for resources to survive. So
Mm.
that's what tribalism is all about. And
Mm.
so you cannot really take the tribe away from the people, because some tribes may have become stronger, like tribes that have a lot more people. And so they're referred to as the stronger majority. But then the contention for their survival is what has always enforced these tribes to either be majority or minority.
Mm.
So if you look at most African countries, you know, who are already experiencing democracy, now bringing Africa, you know, in a form of governance that they were not used to, is foreign to them.
Mm.
Mm.
Because back in the day, they've always been governed by the tribes and the tribal chiefs. But now, taking away that power and centralizing it in a result or a form of governance called democracy, it's very new to them. I mean, we have some countries who have tried to integrate this by bringing in some of the council of chiefs to be part of governance. And that's just happening in certain countries. Or, like, for
Mm.
example, like in Nigeria, we have ministries of chieftaincy affairs, right?
Mm.
We
Ah.
have to work alongside with the tribal leaders, because the people trust, the people will listen,
Mm.
and the people believe that the chiefs and the tribal leaders will have their interests at heart.
Yes.
So thinking about taking away, you know, tribalism away from them, it's going to be a really long process. And I don't even think that Africa, I'm not sure that they're 100% ready for that, because it's still, majority of them still believe so much in their tribal strength. So for example, like in Nigeria, a Nigerian would say, I'm from the north, before she tells you her name, right?
Mm.
I'm from the north. It's part of their identity. That's what defines them. So they will talk about where they are from before telling you who they are, who their father is. So,
Wow.
wait, tribalism or the tribes from them is just as good as saying that you are trying to eradicate their culture.
Hmm.
So, I want to say that, you know, eradicating tribalism it could be, you know, something in the long run, in the long term, you know, based on the new generations that will come and agree to maybe depart from the tribal cohesion. But that is hard. That is harder than, you know, just what I'm saying, because the tribes are still holding the countries together. So maybe I would say we could rephrase it to say, how could the tribes help? How can they help not eradicate them? Because the people believe so much, you know, in their tribes. So if you look at, and this is not happening just in Africa alone. So let me share another example. Like if you look at the Americans believe that the Black Africans are going through some form of racism or discrimination that's called tribalism, of course, whereby, you know, the resources, the opportunities are taken by just a section or selected group of people. But you have to understand that in every society, there are some form of clustering happening, segregation. So, for example, like in America, we have the Americans that are of African descent, Americans that are of Asian descent. Those are all clustering,
Mm.
right? And they speak a certain language, they understand each other, they have the same culture, and so they would trust and believe in each other.
Wow.
So
Wow.
this is what tribalism is about. So
Mm.
people believe that their clusters are more like people who are part of their clusters are more like them, can be compared to them. So their tribes are a form of security for them, a sense
Okay.
of belonging, you know, because you feel like, okay, anyone who is like me who speaks the same language as me, who understands what I do, who eats the same kind of food or whatever, would have my interest at heart. When we look at the majorities and the minorities, and I know that's a thing of a concern to the rest of the world, but most tribes have become majorities because they have a lot more people. So, for example, a country who has like 100 million people, and if we have a particular tribe who is about 20 million people, of course that tribe will become a majority.
Right.
And when you look into like taking on political positions, they will have a lot more people who will support them, who
Yes.
will vote for them. And so they continue to stay on as the majority versus the minority who probably has fewer number of people, maybe fewer resources, and might not have that kind of support like the majority. Yes. The good news is this. The African countries have adopted something called a program called the FCC. I don't know if you've heard about the FCC. That's the Federal Character Commission. And the Federal Character Commission is a body that has been established, on the principle of fairness and equity.
Yes.
And so this commission is supposed to make sure that the political representations or the resources is being scanned across all of the tribes, whether majority or minority, but make sure that everyone is represented. Now, the problem is going to be, is everybody going to stick to that? But it's been introduced and some countries are using it. So over to you.
Wow, wow, wow. This is extremely, extremely good. I love the mindset behind and understanding what we talk about when we say tribalism. Most people don't understand that. Okay, so let me ask you this question, Dr. Louisa. What leadership lessons have we learned during this pandemic? What leadership lessons have we learned during this pandemic?
Thank you so much for the question. I believe that a core portion of leadership has got to do with influence. And so during this pandemic, we've had an opportunity where we've seen people who are like the influencers of different countries, who sometimes, for example, like the football player, for example, who has professionalized into another country, has come back to say, guess what? I know I'm the star. I know I'm the football player, but I tested positive with COVID. And so that alone has kind of set the tone. And even though so many African countries did not want to, take it seriously at the beginning, but what that has done to us is that we have learned to take really quick decisions. Because as soon as the pandemic happened, you had to become proactive. And that's the second thing. Like, what resources do I have? People in my country are dying. How can I help them? If I don't have the right resources, how can I get support from other people? And we've seen different African countries who have sought for assistance from international bodies, have supported them. Many leaders have tried to manage what they had within that period.
Yes.
I would say that there are three major lessons here. I would say quick decision making, one of the lessons, effective management of their resources and control and allocation, because at that point, everyone was troubled. I don't know how long this is going to last for. So I have to be able to control whatever resources that I have and be able to allocate them without wasting. So productive, proactive, effective resources allocation and control, and quick decision making. Those would be the three leadership lessons.
Wow, wow. Sir Clyde Rivers, your thoughts?
I think Louisa's voice is being elevated It's being elevated now. Louisa, you want to think about your actual voice. God has made it bigger for the continent now. And please make sure you always speak to the issues. You are no longer an echo. You're a voice of change for the continent of Africa. And I ask you to honor that position, because your words now have power to move nations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And with that said, Dr. Louisa, I would like to ask you this question. And this is where I would say we get to the meat and potatoes of why we are here. Give us 2 solutions, if you would, of how Africa can create its own, watch this, and many people will say, wait a minute, I thought we had our own. Give me 2 solutions on how Africa can create its own identity.
Yeah. Wow, that is a really good question, I must say. And I would have loved to give you 4, but I'll give you 2.
Give us the 4. Give us the 4. Let's go with it. We're all in.
I'm here with Dr. Rivers, so I have to give extra. I would say, let's look at identity, for example. Let's kind of unpack identity. Identity has got to do with originality. That's the first thing. And one of the ways that you can create identity has to be through your values. When it comes to your values as an African, there are many things, that a society would value, and some things that we do not value. So what makes Africa, Africa, right? So if we depart from those things, we become a bit diluted. Then we're not Africa anymore. So example of some of those are respect. As a younger child, our parents have had to drum respect into our system. And so anywhere that you find an African, I can tell, because they try to respect the younger ones, try to show respect for the older ones. And when you move away from that and get to the Western world, you would notice a younger person sitting on a chair and an elderly who has some form of disability standing. Understand that. So one thing that has got to do with our identity is really upholding our core values. That's so important. The second thing that I would say that is so important is resisting the temptation of liquidation of our core assets. And I'll explain what I mean by this. African countries, majority of them have been going to really heavy debts. For example, with China, and when the Chinese government realizes you cannot pay, they seize your core assets. The minute that core assets are taken from you, those core assets, signifies your unique icon. And that's what identifies you as a country.
Really good.
That. Wow. Another country, you lost your identity.
I love it.
If you tell me, I can add another one. And the second is resisting the temptation to borrow more than we can pay.
Woo! Come on now.
It's not just about asking for money, but is there a system put in place on how you're going to pay back? That's what destroys our identity, because it feels as though we're selling off our cultural heritage.
Wow.
That is so painful.
It's really good, Louisa, man.
And African leaders must look into developing our heritage.
Yes.
What makes Kenya, Kenya? The wildlife. What makes West Africa, West Africa? The green forests. And we have to build more of that. Invest in that and bring people back to us. Because that's what makes us who we are. Over to you.
Wow.
Man.
I'm going to attempt to regurgitate what Dr. Louisa just
crushed
said.
it. Wait, Doc.
Go ahead.
Crushed it, Doc. She crushed it. there's no more baseball in the park. She hit it over the wall.
Yes. So as we look at this, some of the solutions that Dr. Louisa is giving over is holding on to our core values,
Yes.
Wow.
safeguarding our core assets,
Yes.
resisting the temptation to borrow more than you can pay,
Man.
and developing our heritage.
Yes.
Is that safe?
Yes, absolutely.
Jesus.
All right. So I hope that you all are picking up what is actually being put down here. We have it on the chat. We want you to see this because I believe that this is not only necessary for Africa, but it is necessary for the rest of the globe. The rest of the globe. And this is why we have these leaders, world leaders in civility, that are bringing true solutions to our everyday problems.
Yes.
Are you picking up what Dr. Louisa has just put down? Now, as we discuss this, Dr. Louisa, I want to, if I can, have a combined question.
Yes.
One would be, I want you to share a few examples of how we can innovate change. And then I want you to talk to us about how we, what will it take to build and sustain Africa's legacy?
Wow, this is really good, and thank you so much for everyone who's watching. Of course, there's so many people on my watch party watching. I really appreciate you all for making up time to be here. So, innovating change in Africa, we're here for this. Dr. Vernet, it is so important that Africans identify and find a way to stop importing ideas that work in their environment.
Man, do you hear that? Importing, wait, Louisa. Louisa.
Yes,
I always knew you were smart. I just didn't know you were brilliant. But you just removed all doubt. The doubt's all gone now. Cat's out of the bag. You're brilliant.
Come on now. Come on now. We're bringing the fire, the heat, and the smoke all at the same time.
You know, for example, look at like the winter jacket. The winter jacket is great. But we don't have winter. We have winter in America. That works here. It doesn't matter how beautiful the winter jacket looks. If you take it to Africa, that's a no-brainer. That doesn't make sense. Sometimes the problem is that we import technologies which may work for other people's country and services, but not serve us.
Come on now.
Wow.
Come on now. This is good.
Learn how to harness the resources that we have. We have our local resources. We have to begin to think about how these resources can be used to provide solutions for the problems that we have.
It's really good.
Boy, I hope that you all are picking up what's being put down right now. Your life can be better. Your continent, your tribe, whatever it is can be better if you just listen. That's all it takes, folks. I hope that you all are literally hearing what's actually going down right now, because these are the solutions that it will take to move your economies forward.
Yeah.
Stop looking at what everybody else has. Stop looking at what everyone else is doing and say, what must be done right where I am? What worked for my country, in my town, and in my city? How can we become progressive and innovative right where we are? I love it. I love it, Dr. Louisa.
Yes, and you know, Dr. Vernet, it's like bringing a square peg into a round hole. It's not gonna work. So importing a solution that is sophisticated to resolve a local problem is going to create more problems.
This is good.
Man.
So we first of all have to, define what are the problems that we have in Africa, and use like a 3-step process: the how, the what, the why. Look into that problem. Bring the leaders together to analyze it, the experts together. For example, in America, look at this. Everyone has got a green notation of everything. Everyone is going green. Everyone is trying to eat organic foods. In Africa, we have them at the back of our homes.
Come on now.
But we refuse to eat those food. We want to pay for the canned food from another country.
Open your eyes and gain the wisdom that is sitting before you.
Wow.
You have what you need, but you will overlook it because you see something else.
Wow.
Oh man, oh man, oh man.
The solution to our problems are within our same environment. So what we need to do is to develop our people, our human capital. We have a lot of educated people, and intellectual people in Africa, from Africa, who do not even have a job. So how do we create an atmosphere where we can put these people to use? All these educated people, unemployment keeps increasing every day, and we are not doing anything about it.
Wow.
So that's
Lord.
the major way that we can create change, innovate change in Africa. Dr. Vernon, I was going to add one more thing.
Let's do it.
We can innovate change is that, of course, innovation and change has to do with our culture.
Mm-hmm.
So what we need is to have a mental shift from consumption to production.
You speak in my language. I love it. From consumption to production. Absolutely. We want you to live to produce. This is what it's all about.
Yes.
Oh.
So some cultures in Africa, have prided themselves, for example, in their countries, have built beautiful airports, for example. But 4 to 6 years down the line, you visit those airports and they're falling apart.
Come on now.
Maintain.
True.
We are thinking about how we can acquire new things all the time. So we need to embrace a paradigm shift in the way that we think.
Yeah.
That if we had to use
all
the time, we are not like Dubai where everything is outsourced. Oh no, we have to preserve our environment. But it's a mental thing. We have to take ownership.
Yeah.
And ownership must be driven into everyone's mind. It belongs to us. This is our Africa. How can we preserve and protect this Africa so that we do not lose it? You, Dr. Brown.
Man, look, Sir Clyde Rivers, what do you have? What do you have? This is what I'm talking about right here.
See, this is what we need for people to hear the narrative. This is not a narrative that you hear anywhere else. And this is why we assemble special voices, because that continent will change, but you have to hear the right narratives. Yeah. And what I love about Dr. Akaizo is she runs this on her show. She's mentored a way for us to come into Civility, and now we have a full day of Civility work going on. And Louisa, I want to thank you for your pioneer spirit of working this for years when no one even knew Civility existed in the African American community. And you were actually plowing in Africa, making a way for us to come, and we are grateful for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dr. Rivers, I know that Dr. Bernard, you were asking a question about legacy, and I think that that's something that really touches my heart. And if you give me a moment, I would love to mention about our legacy.
Yes.
Because it's important that we Africans build or sustain our legacy by really creating a system that attracts Africans, not a system that repels Africans. And that is really important. The government has got to look into it. Doesn't matter what country of Africa, but we have to look into getting people to come back, something that attracts them to come back to Africa and invest in Africa. It's okay to develop the people who are there, but we have so many educated Africans outside who have trouble going back home. So how do we bring them back home? They will only come back home if we have the right system in place.
Come on now. Come on now. I like that. I like that. We have to understand how we can bring, watch this. It is an atrocity to any community to raise up the next generation only for them to leave. Wow. And even if they do leave, we are looking for them to return with wisdom, with information, with technology, with a way forward so that we can continue to sustain who we are as a people.
Yes.
Good.
So it's imperative that we have some type of pipeline that allows our system to reproduce and replenish itself.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. This is good. This is good. I love it. I love it. I love it. I am grateful and thankful, Dr. Louisa Akaizo, for your wisdom today and being on the State of Civility Summit Africa. We must do better. We all can do better, and together we can make it happen. We are so looking forward to having the civilized presence on the Civility360 platform so that we can enhance our reach together. Again, what we endeavor to do is to bring civility from a 360-degree angle to help our world. We all have something that we all need. The question is, will we be open? Will we be honest? Will we be transparent so that we all can win? Wow. So I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. And I ask that you please hold on because I'm sure there will be questions that may come up that we can answer from our chat. As well as I know that there are several people who are doing watch parties. Your comments on the other watch parties aren't showing up here. So if you want to actually put some of those comments in, we can get them on the screen for the world and also for the replay as people watch here. Again, we know it is day, evening, noon, and night somewhere. So we want to make sure that we get this captured so that everyone is able to partake in the summit today. Thank you again, Dr. Louisa Akaizo. You are a breath of fresh air.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate having me. Thank you, Dr. Rivas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank goodness.
Woo! Listen, folks, it's only going to get better. And I want you to know that we have assembled this platform for the purpose of showing you that the world is a good place, but it could be a better place when we all bring our cluster of innovation, our cluster of civility, our cluster of productivity, and that is when we will start experiencing heaven on earth.
Yes.
Sir Clyde Rivers, man, I am so proud, so excited for what we have presented thus far. And I know it is amazing. This is what it's all about. All civility, all the time, everywhere. Yeah. I would like to bring Professor Jared Akama to the stage so that we can partake in the wisdom that God has blessed him with. Let's bring Dr. Jared Akama, Professor Jared Akama, to the stage. Blessings, Professor. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Outstanding. Thank you so much for joining us for the State of Civility Africa. We are super excited to have you on. We are bringing solutions to the new African narrative. How are you doing this day?
I'm doing very fine, and I'm happy that you approached me to the show so that we can tell the world where Africa is going.
Absolutely, absolutely, my friend. Let's start off by asking you this question. What will Africa build to sustain its legacy? What will Africa build to sustain its legacy?
Thank you for that good question on what Africa needs to do to build its legacy. Before I endeavor to answer that question, we need to understand Africa. Where have we come from? All manner of things have been done to the continent of Africa. And I always say that it is time for Africa to stop organizing and start organizing itself. That is the fundamental point, because we have talked that we were colonized. That's the truth. We were taken as cheap labor, as slave trade. That is the truth. All our resources are being stolen when we are watching at this point of time. That's the truth. But it is high time that we need to start organizing Africa and protecting what belongs to Africa. And when you bring me to this kind of show, I feel humbled with a lot of humility that we need to have a legacy for Africa. Africa, in the first place, democracy in Africa is wanting. When African leaders come to in power, they don't want to accept. So one of the legacies of Africa, which we need to do, is to practice periodical elections, which is free and fair. In the nutshell, I'm trying to say that Africa needs freedom and democracy. When people are free to elect their leaders, they feel that they are part of the system. And I always say that for us to have a legacy in Africa, for heaven's sake, let us have the African people informed. Let us involve them. Let us consult them. Let us have the politics of consensus.
Yes.
We cannot stand at this point of time when all the products being used in Africa are coming from outside. What we need to do, buy Africa, build Africa. That is the great legacy our leaders ought to do. Africa should be proud of its young people. We have got the youth population in the world. As Dr. Royce is trying to say that, let us encourage our leaders, make the environment which will retain the African young people to be in Africa. Wherever they come to the West, let them come to Africa. Hear this, one of the legacies. Who will build in Africa when we have the best intelligent young people, engineers, doctors, entrepreneurs, living outside the continent of Africa? And what we are trying to say, a while ago we have been discussing a continent issue about racial discrimination in the world. Any black man in the world, be it African American, be it the black people living in Asia, living in Europe, living in America, Latin America, the umbilical cord is in Africa. The other legacy is to encourage the African people, wherever they are staying, that they should come to Africa. Let us follow from the Jews. The Jews are all over the world. They are in Russia, they are in America, they are in Africa, but they always go and build their state in the Middle East. So that's one of my recommendation, that for heaven's sake, let us inform people, let us involve them, and let us encourage our young people to be innovative. You always say that we should think outside the box. I say, let us think without the box. And this is exactly what we are trying to do, this kind of conversation. That's what I have to say to that question.
Wow, wow, wow. Dr. Jared Akama, listen, would never disappoint you. Will always bring a perspective that you have never heard nor understood until he speaks. And it is amazing as you are talking, what comes to mind, and even that's in our chat, is rethinking Africa.
Yes.
Rethinking Africa. And I think that you have laid it very well, that we must see Africa differently, and we must be able to do that which we are called to do. You can only do it if you buy and if you build Africa.
Amen.
Man, this is phenomenal.
Yeah,
And that within itself, when you say think without a box, think without a box. Why put a limitation on yourself? There is no limitation except for the limitation that you place on yourself.
Yeah.
Sir Rivers.
Dr. Jared, as an educator, I know content is vital. How do we change the content of Africa? It's a twofold question. How do we change the content about Africa coming to the world? And how do we change the content of the mind of the African to where this is to where they wouldn't give up their own citizenship to become a part of another country? Because that's one of the big things I see with the African culture. People are quick to give their birthright up to come to another country.
Thank you, Dr. Rivers, for that good question. That kind of question continue disturbing me, perturbing me, because you find an African professor or doctor coming to United States to be a shoe shiner. That is a waste of the human resource. So what we need to do here is to change our curriculum.
Okay.
And what the world today needs is, I've talked about innovation. I've talked about entrepreneurship. This is what we need to have the condition, the environment which is conducive for African people to be in Africa. A very good example is COVID-19. Every country is on its own.
Yeah.
Nobody's helping the other. We are mobilizing our resources. We are allocating the money. We are doing it through units. And if we do that, the beauty of it here is Africa are moving to other continents. And the people are scrambling for Africa. Come to Africa, go to an African country. What you find are Chinese, are people from Europe, are people from the West. So what I want to say is that Africa, what we need to be proud of, we have got the climate, which is from January to December, which is summer. If you have got a conducive environment, the soil of Africa is very fertile. We can produce food which we can feed the whole world. Remember, Dr. Royce has trying to say that we have what it takes to take this continent into another level. Yes. This one reminds me here, when I was growing up, there would be a very good food prepared by my mom in our house. But you can go with your friends, go and eat food which is not even cooked, vegetables which are being cooked with oil. You can take tea without sugar. So what we want to do here is, there is sugar in Africa, we have got the resources in Africa, we have got the young people, and what we need to do is to do the right things. And hear this, if you are the last person, and then someone says about turn, you will be number one. So what we need to do is to open the mindset of the African people, of the African young people, say that we can succeed in Africa. We have lived in Africa and we have succeeded in Africa. So what we need to do is to have this kind of conversation, and I hope the world is really, they are listening to us, and they know that we have all it takes to build Africa. Hear this: the mobile money, the M-Pesa, where was it started? It is in Africa. So people used to say, is there anything good which can come from Bethlehem or Nazareth? I'm trying to say that something good will come from Africa.
Yeah.
Jared, I have another question for you. Let's talk about brain drain and brain gain for the continent of Africa. How do you see that, and is it changing?
Thank you. I have said that Africa governments, we spend a lot of people to train our young people. Where do they go? They go to Europe and they come to the West. My question here is, who will develop Africa? So time has come to tell African American people who are living out of the continent that they should come back to Africa to develop Africa, because there is nobody who is going to develop the continent of Africa. And I always say, there was a conference I attended in Europe, and they were trying to say all manner of things. And I told them this: give us your free labor, come to Africa and they work for 400 years, and then you'd come and tell me an African is racist. So what we need to do, whether they are not being paid well, the responsibility of building Africa is African. So the brain which has been drained from Africa, it is time for us to drain it back to Africa.
Yes. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Professor V.
Wow. If you give us 400 years of free labor, we'll show you how great Africa can be.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. I'm going to let it sit in just for a moment.
Professor V, those are questions that nobody wants to answer. Nobody wants to talk about. Everyone's worried about in America, reparations. Do we have to pay reparations? I'm going, you haven't looked at 400 free years of labor. That's a real legitimate issue. That's the building of the foundation of a country, 400 years. So these are actually relevant topics. And see, Africa has sowed into America. It's sowed into America with 400 years of free labor. So Africa is going to reap a harvest back from God.
Amen.
Whoa! Listen. I hope you all are picking up what's actually being laid down as building blocks. We are talking about the State of Civility Summit Africa, the new African narrative. Professor Jared Akama, let me ask you this question. What does the new Africa look like after this pandemic?
COVID-19, this pandemic has taught the African leaders that they need to do the right things for their people, from their localities, and for Africa. Do you know, let me just give Kenya as an example. Do you know there are no flights coming to Kenya or going out of Kenya? So the African leaders, rich people, were fond of going to the West, to India, to South Africa for medical treatment. Remember, even in the city of Nairobi, there is a lockdown that you cannot be able to come to the city. So it means out of this COVID-19, it has given people the opportunity to improve the medical facilities and equipment around the country.
Wow.
The other point here is, it has taught us that we need to use our resources prudently. COVID-19 has given us the unit of purpose. We are facing the enemy. And I want to believe that out of this COVID-19, we are going to come out stronger than when we were before. So our bad manners is going to change. Civility is going to be the way, because we are going to treat people the way we want us to be treated. So I see this pandemic as an opportunity for bringing the African together, and even the West are so much ashamed on how Africa has handled this. Bill Gates was trying to say that this pandemic, we are going to see a lot of bodies in the streets of Africa. But we thank God that he has been very gracious with us. I have not seen those cases. We are resistant to this pandemic. And because of this, I hope those who are in authority and the kind of conversation we are trying to discuss, because what we are discussing this evening is entering in history. It is going to be recorded, and they say that Africa can rise, and that this is the time for Africa.
Wow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Let me ask you this, Professor Jared Akama. Give us 2 solutions, and if you have more, by all means, please share, on how Africa can create its own identity.
This is how Africa is going to create its identity. Some of the things that Africa has done is bad manners, which they have taken from other places, be it Asia, in China, be it Europe, be it America. For Africa to take off, we must have homegrown solutions. I have said for the first day,
homegrown
solutions. The African problems will only be solved by Africans themselves, because we understand. You can't go to the bereaved people, you find them not mourning, and you mourn more than them. So the people from the West, be it America, be it Europe, be it Asia, be it Australia, whichever part of the world they are coming from, they cannot pretend to masquerade to solve the African problem. The African problem must be solved by the African people.
Yes.
I've said the problem in Africa, democracy is one thing. We have said for heaven's sake, let us practice democracy. Let us involve people. Let us inform people. Let us consult people. Let us have politics of consensus. It will take Africa into another level. The next point which Africa needs to do, we have talked about the young people. They are the people who are going to work. They are the humans of the continent us. We have to create the environment so that we tap these resources. And the other recommendation I am saying, Africa, people, so long as you are Africa, living anywhere in the world, your umbilical cord is in Africa. Come back to Africa and build Africa. Together, as African people, we will stand. And if you want to kill us African people, if we are separated, you can manage. But if we remain together, we share our ideas, we share our problems, yes, you can kill us, but you will take many days to finish us.
That is good. That is good. That is good. Wow. Wow. I love the way that you bring the solutions that encompass Africa. Many times people always look on the outside for the answer, when the answer truly is within. So I'm grateful and thankful to hear your mindset, because not many people have this mindset. Most people are looking to be rescued and not looking to put in the actual effort to accomplish it themselves. This is very, very good. I appreciate that. Let me ask you this question, Dr. Akama. What leadership lessons have you learned during this pandemic?
Thank you. I want to use Kenya as a hypothetical case. One of the things I have learned from this case, like our president, the first thing he did when the pandemic, the first case was reported to Kenya, he mobilized people from all the religious backgrounds, be it Muslims, be it Hindus, be it Christians, be it traditionalists, and we submitted ourselves in the supreme being, into the higher authority. And that's why God has been so much gracious to us. One of the things I have learned is to submit ourselves to the kingdom of God. Number two, I have come to realize that we have got enough resources in Kenya for our own use.
Wow, that's good.
Number three, the cabinet secretary for health has on daily basis informed the people of Kenya the number of the new cases, the people who have recovered, the people who have passed on. And in rare occasions whereby you will find the government passing condolences to the bereaved family. So in this, we have been saying that COVID-19 has humbled us to treat people as human beings.
Wow.
And I've seen civility at work.
Wow.
You don't take people for granted. You don't assume people that they know. Involve people. Inform people what's happening. And because of this, we have been able to work together as a people. And out of this COVID-19, we are going to come out of it strong than we have been. And that's the same case I hope that is going to happen to African countries and the rest of the countries in the world. Because, yes, we are independent, but we are interdependent of other people. Interdependent.
This is good. This is very, very good.
Informative.
Submit ourselves to the kingdom of God.
Yes.
Learn that we have enough resources and treat people as human beings. Involve and inform people.
Wow.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal, my friend. I am grateful and thankful once again for your wisdom.
Wow. Wow.
For your insight and your influence. Today, I hope that those who are watching, whether it will be on the replay or the live or on a watch party or whatever the case may be, that they will be able to pick up what they are hearing and apply it immediately to their lives. Because at the end of the day, this is what we are here for. The new African narrative. Sir Clyde Rivers.
Jared, you're a relevant voice for now. And I love the fact that you're part of our United Graduate College and Seminary faculty and staff. We need people like you to help establish the new narrative. And thank you for your ultimate excellence. You're a great leader.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having invited me to the show. And my mentor is Dr. Rivers. And I always say, tell people thank you in their own hearing, not when they're in the casket. Dr. Rivers.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor Jared Akama. Thank you for being on. Please hold the line if you can. We do know that we're in a big time difference.
Wow.
So if you have to go, we do understand that. But we just want to say thank you, that we appreciate you
man.
participating in the State of Civility Summit Africa and bringing your wisdom.
Thank you.
Next up, we have this young man that we've been talking about. We've had him on several shows. He has done, if you would, what we would call the civility circuit. He has been on multiple civility shows throughout this week, last month. He brings a breath of fresh air and a jewel box of wisdom that just is unheard of. I want to bring in a good friend of ours, ambassador, vice chancellor, professor, doctor, you name it, he's got it. And we're grateful to have him. And that is none other than Ambassador Matthias Matola. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing so good, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be on this show. I'm just excited to be listening to Dr. Lisa, Dr. Gerard. I've learned a lot. Thank you so much for having me in again in this wonderful show. Which I believe changing lives and destiny. I believe that after this, Africa will not be the same again. I'm sure of that. We are here for that.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, it is truly a pleasure to have you on. We know once again, you know, in terms of time, you all have stayed up to make sure that you've made this. So we don't want to belabor the time. Ambassador Matola, talk to us about your thought pattern and process. Let's start off for you. Let's start off with your solutions. I want you to give us 2, maybe 3. I know how you work. Let's start off with your solutions on how Africa can create its own identity.
Well, excuse me. That's a very interesting question. How Africa can create our own identity. I believe that there are about 3 things we can look at right now. I believe that number 1, for Africa to be able to create her full identity, she has to cut off depending on one foreign aid. Africa stop taking and applying for foreign aid altogether and begin to engage in a self-sufficient development endeavors, right? Can you hear me, Dr. Gerard? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a little low, but I can hear you. Cut off dependence on foreign aid.
Definitely. Africa must really cut it off completely and do a shutdown. Begin to look at our own resources, use them to begin to develop our own country. This can help us a lot. Remember that it was King Solomon who said that something like that. He that borrows becomes a slave to the one that borrows becomes a slave to the lender, something like that. So making us understand that there's no way Africa can truly grow whilst depending on foreign aid in the system. That is a trick to hamper or block the financial or economic development of the continent. So African leaders have to arise to that, have to understand that they really want to be independent or feel not just independent, but exercise their freedom, because you can be independent and not be free. So African states, most of us are independent by our constitution, but in reality, we are not free because there's no economic freedom. And I think that one of the ideas that the former colonial masters have used to bind Africa is, okay, you are free in your land, but still you depend on us economic-wise. And a country cannot fully exercise its freedom, not just independence, but freedom without economic sustainability. So cutting off aid and begin to focus on the self-development is going to help the country to grow, and I think that's going to reestablish the identity of the continent as a whole, but as well as individual countries. Unless we do that, we cannot really reestablish our own identity, or Africa cannot reestablish our own identity. Then I think number 2, which can help Africa, is the production of knowledge that responds and serves local needs, the production of knowledge that responds to and serves local needs. After we to begin to understand, like what the Professor Director was saying, we need African solutions for African problems. So African problems need African solutions. And for that matter, Africa must begin to produce knowledge that responds to and serves local needs. If they begin to do that, for example, now in the pandemic, let's suppose that there were more countries like Madagascar coming up with syrups or concoctions that would really, not just supposedly, but really heal COVID-19. Imagine how that would elevate the country, even at the uttermost world rank, right? So it could even, it may suppose that this African country came with this solution or syrup or concoction that really does heal people from COVID-19 and it sent abroad. That's going to change something. I've learned from history and from Mozambique, Africa, and we were colonized by the Portuguese. And the elders tell us that during the colonial rule in Mozambique, we never imported anything. Mozambique was always exporting, always exporting, always exporting. And today, even the things that we produce locally, they have to go to Europe to be processed, and then they come back and sell them to us at a very high price. So, and watch this. In the past, during the colonial rule, we were exporting, we were producing and exporting. So what happened? We have to go back to that. We need to produce local knowledge that's going to help us solve our own issues as Africans and also as specific nations, the countries here in Africa. And then I think that the first thing can help us is establishing and establishing and prioritizing national agendas, right? Agendas that carry national agendas or agendas that carry national issues far above the European and Western agendas, because most African countries like Mozambique, our national agendas are based or they depend on the agendas of the Western European countries. So for Africa to reestablish identity, just to begin to reestablish our own and prioritize on her own agendas and make sure that its agendas come first than the European and Western agendas. And these European and Western agendas are only incorporated provided they help us grow and does not create subconsciously create a master slave or a master slave kind of dependency. But our sovereignty is fully accepted. I think these three are going to help us reestablish our identity as a country.
This is good. This is good. I love the way that you break these things down. So establishing our own national agenda is absolutely important. Transaction of knowledge that responds to and serves the local need. Many times we're looking at everything else and we're not focusing or being fixated on what's the problem or issue that needs to be solved right where we are. So this is good. Let me ask you this question. What leadership lessons have you learned from or during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think that the first important thing I've learned about leadership is that we have to pass on the baton. I think this is a very important point to understand, because the great thing we have here in Africa is that people don't want to pass on the baton. We want to be in position of power like forever. You find sometimes that even the physical conditions do not allow you anymore to be in your seat, in your position, but you want to hold into it until we die. So I think we need to understand there is a purpose of our position we hold is to serve. We have to serve the people, serve our country, serve the citizens, and serve the continent, and serve the world at large. This is a key to understand. We need to find pleasure at allowing young people to stand on our shoulders and see further than we did, and able to go further than we did. And we can do that and see, keep in a position where we become mentors, right? And find pleasure in that. But it is good that I can spend the next 20 years of my life or 30, empowering the younger generation to take the nation and the continent to the next level and the nation, and find really find pleasure in that. I think this is gonna be one of the greatest key and leadership position we can find. Then the other thing we need to understand is that is we have learned as well that wealth and power, or maybe let's say as wealth and position, without a vision for your mind, it can be very dangerous. These are the things you can see, because we learned that right now, the COVID-19, the situation where you can see that people having the wealth, having the position, but not clear vision for your mind, they can be dangerous. The history of Hitler tells us that, colonialism tells us that, slavery tells us that, even right now, COVID-19, it does tell us that, because some wealthy people come up and say things that you can see some lack of, or either lack of wisdom or passion and love for humanity. So we need to have that. And then the other thing I see here is that civility and certain leadership are the master keys to change the world. Not just Africa, not just Europe, not just America, but the world. It's just about civility, where we train people, we build them to understand that they are important while they're still alive. They need to be valued, respected, feel special while they're alive. And then we have as well to understand that the leadership position is number one, first and foremost, for serving. We have to use this position to serve people. So civility and the leadership positions are the key to change our humanity. I think these are help us understand better. I think these are a few things I could learn into this situation. We have the positions and wealth without vision for humanity can be very dangerous. And then we need to understand that civility, only civility and the servant leadership will change Africa and the world of life. And once again, our African leaders we need African leaders that will establish and uphold. Again, I'm just repeating it here. They have upholded national agendas above all other things. They must have national agendas that foster humanity above all else. This is a key. The national agenda. They have to foster humanity, because the tendency here is mostly for us to tend to have agendas that force our personal ambitions, number one. Number two, our political, our party ambitions. It's about the party. It's never about the people. It's never about the nation as a whole, but about the party and the party. So I'm sure this does not apply to every African country, but then in some African countries, that is what you see. It's all about the political party or either the ambition of the political leaders. So then we need African leaders that really prioritize and establish agendas, national agendas that will foster humanity above all. This is going to help our continent. This is what I believe.
I love it. And as we piggyback off of that, and we've talked many times before, humanity above all else. Humanity above all else. This is what it's all about. When we see that humanity is first, civility will follow. But we must be able to see it in that regard. And most people who are living today have no clue what we are talking about when we say humanity above all else and civility will follow. I love it. Do me a favor, Ambassador. Would you share with us a few examples of how we can innovate change within the countries of Africa?
Yes. I just have, let me just say a few ideas about this one. I think that number one, we have, there's got to be, I'm just repeat what I said earlier, there's got to be a switching of positions whereby the leaders have to invest more in the younger generation. They have to pass on the baton area. I think this is very key. So, and they have to have the pleasure and to see them ascending to the positions of leadership while they are still there. This is key. This will bring many people like, for example, Dr. V, Professor V, and Dr. Rivers that are setting the example. They're just showing us that it is possible for you while alive, to pass on the baton and have the pleasure to see the younger generation carry on. You are there to mentor, you're there to guide. And watch this, you do not feel belittle about that. There's pleasure in that because you believe that. You rejoice because you do not want the next generation to start afresh, from scratch, right? You started first, you had the challenge you had and all that. Then say if you took about 10 years to attain certain breakthrough, you don't want your children, the younger generation, to spend the next 30 years. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So I think life is like a relay, right? You need to keep on passing on the baton. And I think that these are one major key that's going to bring a change in Africa and the innovation as well. And then I think the number two, we need to empower people to awaken to their greatness. People need to awaken to their greatness. This is key. And here I'm looking at, when I talk about greatness, I'm looking at three things. Number one, I'm looking at significance. I'm looking at worthiness, and also I'm looking at deservingness, right? We need people to understand Africa, to awaken to their greatness. There is greatness in them. And the greatness is simply because they're created in the image and likeness of God. This is the light, this is the understanding that we need to have. So they are significant, they are important, and their importance again, it's not what they do, but it's who they are. It is in their identity as sons of the living God, created in the image and likeness of God. Then again, worthiness, because of that, they are people of value. They are valuable, right? They're not only significant, but also they're valuable. And then they deserve, there's deservingness in them because they are created in the image of God. They're important, they're valuable, and they deserve the best. They deserve the good. They deserve what life has to give to them as the good things of life. One of the challenges we have in Africa is the belief that we indeed deserve even the good things of life, right? It is just to be alive, to be in good health, to have our rights respected, we deserve to be honored, to honor the people. We need to build that in the people, that the greatness in them means to say that they're significant, they're worthy, and also they deserve. And again, I think that we need to build a sustainable educational system that will produce success, okay? A sustainable educational system that will produce searchers, not just researchers, but then searchers, right? Produce searchers, innovators, and the critical thinkers. I think that these three is going to help an educational system that will produce searchers, not just researchers, as well as innovators and the critical thinkers. Last but not least, on this point, we need civility in action. We need to practice love, unconditional acceptability. And we need to honor and value people while they're still alive. In most African countries, communities, even families, they wait for you to die to give you a rose, to give you a flower, to cry, to say you're important. I mean, to give a testimony, right to the funeral, they'll ask some people to give a testimony or a thank you whatsoever. They begin to say, this person was significant, this person helped me because of this person, I've attained this, such and that. But guess what? They've never said that while the person was alive. They never spoke that to the person. They never shared that with the person. So we need to break that and say, hey, honor people, value them while they're still alive. I believe those big 3 points is going to help us go somewhere.
Phenomenal. Yes. And we definitely appreciate how you bring the answers to the table. We are talking about creating the new African narrative. We're live right here on the Civility 360 platform as we have our Civility Summit for Africa. My. I'm grateful and thankful to have you on, Ambassador Matthias, and how you always bring the heat, if you would, that makes you think. And that is what's most important. Let me ask you this question. What are your thoughts on tribalism in Africa?
Well, this is a great challenge to deal with because it's been going on for centuries, and really, I think it was even instigated by after the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 1885, when they came up with the Berlin Act, which they decided to divide Africa into borders, official borders, but according to where they wanted to exploit or explore in those days. But I believe that we need to work on this, and one of the things we need to embark on is the change of mentality. There's got to be a mental re-education at the community level, at the educational academia level, as well as the political level. At the community level, we need to understand that everybody is important and significant. We need to understand we can coexist regardless of our differences. Then we need to go to the academic level as well, where we need to understand that it's not really right to build some schools for certain kind of people in a given society, in a given nation. And also, of course, we come to the political level where certain tribes are the ones that are allowed to run for presidency. Again, we need to take this to that dimension so that we can begin to break down, and change the issue of tribalism and again place humanity above that. But to bring back to past, we need to take us back a little bit to the history of how tribalism was emphasized a lot and taken advantage of by the slave masters, especially after the Berlin Conference. This is what happens. History tells us that, for example, there was a man called William Lynch. He was one of the men that in the United States of America that really managed to have his slaves under control. And one day he was called to go to Virginia and to give a speech to please all the slave masters. Why was that? His slaves were totally were really submissive to him with no cases of revolt and insurgency. And this is what he tells them. He says, I have divided them, made them to be divided against each other. He divided the slaves into three groups, according to three groups: gender, age, and complexion. He told the light in complexion that they were better off than the dark in complexion. Then he goes and tells the dark in complexion the very same thing. It comes down to the sex, to the gender. It tells the males that they were better off than the females, and vice versa. Then it comes to age. It tells the younger generation, younger people, they were stronger and better off than the older ones, and vice versa. So at the end of the day, three things came up from that we can feel this today in most African countries. There was fear amongst us, there was distrust and the envy. And so at the end of the day, there was that consciousness that which is foreign is better than that which is local. So the white people, if I use that term, European people or Western people are better than us. So at some point, our self-esteem was crushed. And eventually, that both division and as far as the tribes are concerned, and that's been going on for ages. So I think that to begin to explain that is we try to re-educate people mentally and probably might bring some light into understanding that this probably was not there from the beginning. It was instilled in us. So it was instilled in us, we can still get rid of it. This is very important. So in that level or at the nation, we need to help people understand that we need to navigate from the tribal consciousness or mentality to humanity mentality. This is important. Then again, that's going to help us divorce from the colonization mentality. We come to understand that, hey, we are important and significant. These borders and these tribal divisions were created by our colonial and slavery masters. We were not like that at the beginning. So if we did live together before, we did coexist, we can do it again. So we need to understand that tribalism can really be put below humanity and help us build our societies and countries. But again, we need to promote what I call, see, there are good things, maybe not so obvious good things about tribalism. They love this thing that they call, they're so loyal. If you watch them carefully, there's so much, the high level of loyalty in them. And then there is what I call the insider consciousness. Now, these loyals, because these loyals, they can kill, they can assassinate, they can do whatever they feel is right to defend their tribe. And then this insider consciousness tells them, hey, if you belong to us, you are safe and protected. Now, let's suppose we pick this loyalty as well as and tell them, hey, what about we extend the Lord and give this loyal consciousness not just to our tribe, but to humanity, right? What about if we pick on these insider consciousness, not just to our tribe, but humanity, where we explain that every life really matters. Every life matters. So we take this spirit, right? Loyalty and insider consciousness to help people understand that every life matters. These, I'm sure, gonna help us work these tribalism issues, which we find a lot in Africa. And maybe the next thing we could help in this regard is to keep on promoting civility payments. We need to keep on insisting and persisting on civility. We need to promote equity. This is very important, equity. We need to help people understand that they can disagree. They can agree to disagree. This is very important, right? We can agree to disagree. We can disagree without disrespecting one another. We can disagree without disrespecting each other. And should there be a solution, a challenge or conflict between the two groups of people, we need to understand that we can start solving this by looking at the point of where there's agreement, right? Not just for the differences at the common ground. We can begin from a common ground and look for a solution for our differences. But then these solutions at the most have to promote humanity, elevate humanity. And these, I'm sure that this is going to help us. And then at the end of the day, we know that Africans are very religious by nature. And I understand that from history that King Leopold the second, the one who was behind the Berlin Conference, he took advantage of the fact that Africans are religious people. He sent missionaries to Africa and he told them, do not teach them about God. They know about God. Don't teach them about evil and good or evil. They know about other things. But take advantage from the very same Bible or God they believe in and begin to teach them things that will make them really accept slavery. And that's where, for example, they misinterpret the scriptures like the one Genesis chapter 9 or 10, where Noah cursed Canaan, and then they began to say, because this Canaan is Ham's son, and then black people, so black people are cursed by God. So you need to go to the very thing and have to say, no, God is love. God is good, right? So, and loving God can never do that to any human being which was created in his image and likeness. So it begins even to explain to the Africans how the scriptures are misinterpreted to get them to accept slavery and colonialism. So that's going to shed some light, and I believe eventually they begin to say, hey guys, we need to walk in love.
Phenomenal, my friend. And this is what it's all about. It's opening the eyes of our understanding so that we can truly see who we are, where we are, and what we are to do. You know, I'm super excited every time we get the opportunity to have a conversation because people's minds are illuminated. They are seeing things from a completely different lens and a completely different level. And that is who we are. That is what we are created to do. So I just want to say thank you. thank you for being on with us today on the State of Civility Summit Africa, bringing solutions, talking about the next steps, the next levels that we can go to, experiencing and helping people to understand the marks of tribalism and how that works and what it will take for Africa to own its identity. These things, I believe, without a shadow of a doubt, are what will move the countries of Africa forward. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you do and how you show up every single time, my friend.
Thank you, Dr. V, for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Anytime, my friend. Trust and believe we are making a difference in this world. And as we've stated several times already, we can all do better. The question is, what is that next step? So thanks again, my friend. Blessings and peace. If you could hold on, if there are any questions, we'll make sure that we answer them. But I do understand the time and the time limitation there. So thank you once again for being on the State of Civility Summit Africa.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Well, next up, we're going to have Dr. Charles Tershret come on. He is going to be bringing a fresh and new perspective as we continue on with the State of Civility Summit Africa. He has an awesome initiative and narrative that I would love for each and every one of you to hear. So without further ado, Dr. Charles, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Professor Vernon. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We are grateful and thankful for you to be on and to bring your perspective. Life is good when you understand why life is meant to be lived. So as we continue forward, let's talk a little bit about Africa. Let me ask you this question. What does the new Africa look like after this pandemic?
I think it's going to be a complete, just like anywhere in the world, it's going to be a completely different continent. And I pray that the people of Africa, especially the leaders of Africa, will realize that COVID-19 is a great opportunity for the continent to self-determine. This is a godly thing that's happening right now in Africa for us to grab the opportunity to make a U-turn from the way we're leading our countries. If we miss this opportunity, it's going to be difficult for us to recover. So, and in all my messages, because I'm running a show that's called the New African Conversation, I think it's time for us as Africans to bring on the table a new strategic conversation. Help us start seeing the continent as our responsibility to make Africa great again. Somewhere along the line, we missed that opportunity, but it's not too late to do that. We can still make it happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And I am definitely in agreement with you. You know, when you look at something, the perspective or the lens from which you look at will determine how you treat it. And what I want everyone to know and understand is Africa is the motherland. And if Africa is the motherland, that means that it has produced greatness. All around the world, people have been affected by the things and the people who come from Africa. So as we look at this pandemic, as we look at what the new Africa will look like, it's dependent on several things that we will discuss as we continue on. What will Africa do to build and to sustain its legacy? What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Charles?
I think for us as Africans, it is important that we go back to understanding our history. We have to come to the point where we know we have to understand that our history did not start with slavery and colonization. Africa was once a powerful continent. One of the richest men in the world was an African. We need to go back to our history to know that Africa had kings and queens who were powerful. So what the first thing Africans need to do is to reconcile themselves with their history, but to use slavery and colonization as an experience they can learn from, and to say, this will never happen again. But until we reconcile ourselves with our history, it's going to happen again, because it's not in the interest of the Western world to see African mobilizing and getting their act together. They will do anything they can to prevent it from happening. So it is our responsibility to change the game and to say that the continent is ours. We believe that Africa is a heaven on earth continent, and therefore it's up to us to make African proud again.
This is good. This is good. So understanding our history and learning from slavery and colonization. So with that in mind, I want to ask you the question, how do we deal with tribalism in Africa?
You know, everything boils down to education. When you start seeing people, when you start teaching people to see the neighbor as a fellow citizen, as a compatriot, that we are from the same land, that our home is our country. Like in my case, I come from Gabon in Central Africa. I should be able to see any other Gabonese as my brother, as my sister, without fearing anything. Because the reason why there's tribalism, because people are just driven by fear. You fear the neighbor because they told you that something about them. Look what happened in Rwanda. The genocide in Rwanda that was just driven by fear. You fear your neighbor. You start hearing things about your neighbor. And of course, the only way for you to protect yourself is to become aggressive and to start attacking the other person, be it verbally or physically. So until we break down that pattern, when we start seeing the other person as a fellow human being, a person with the spirit of God in them, this will not change. So education is very important. People have to start seeing the best interest of the country before their personal interest, their tribal interest. Until we come to that point, it's going to be difficult to overcome that. So education is very key in this process.
I like that. I like that. What leadership lessons have you learned during this pandemic when it comes to Africa?
As an individual, the way I say it, I think this pandemic was just a great opportunity for Africa to rethink the way we see our continent, to rethink the way we manage our countries, and to rethink the way we dedicate ourselves to the growth of our countries. We saw today that Africa was not alone in this pandemic. Everybody was affected by that. And then we saw also that because of the pandemic, everybody was thinking in terms of, what can I do for my own people? How can I protect my people? So we became very individualistic in this process. So Africa had to learn from that. When it comes to survival, when it comes to fighting for what you're entitled to, you have, first of all, to count on yourself. That's why I believe that the unity of Africa is so important, because as individual countries, we cannot face the challenge that comes from the outside. We have to come together as one. We have to get together and bring that new conversation in Africa for us to start seeing the interest of the continent, not that of our small countries. Let me give you a small example. You see a country like Gabon. Gabon is like 1.2 million people. A country like Burundi, maybe more, there's a larger population, but the country is very small. Can you imagine those countries standing in front of the United States to negotiate? You cannot possibly win a negotiation with the United States until we come together, Africa comes together as a united bloc. Then it's going to make a difference. Then people will start looking at us in a different way and giving us more consideration. Right now, as we are divided, it will not happen. It will not work.
You know, one of the things, Dr. Charles, as you were talking, that really came to my mind is this statement: changing our mindset to only see victory. changing our mindset to only see victory. Yes, we may be small, but when we gather, we are strong.
Yeah.
Yes, you may have more, but we have innovation, ingenuity, and creativity too. And I think one of the things that we need to do is change our mindsets to the warrior mindset. The warrior says, I will win at all costs. There is no other option but to win. And when I go into something, I don't go to participate only, I go to dominate. And when we begin to look at it from that perspective, everything around us will shift. Everything around us will change. Share with us, if you would, 2 solutions on how Africa can create a new mentality, a new identity, a new wave of doing things. What are the things that we need to do for that?
Like you said, like you rightly said, the battle is in the mind. For many centuries, Africans have been led to believe that they're no good, that everything that they have is linked to the devil. Today I was watching a very moving video from a guy from the Republic of Congo, from Kinshasa. Mm-hmm. He went to a museum in France. And then before he went to the museum, he was saying that almost more than 9,000 pieces in that museum in France come from Africa, which is true. Mm-hmm. How did Europeans manage to get those pieces?
Come on now.
They made Africans believe that everything that they had was from the devil. Mm. And what, in fact, Professor Motola was saying earlier on, Ambassador Motola was saying, they led us to believe that what we had was not good. Therefore, everything coming from the white man was good. So they took our pieces, part of our thinking, our culture, what makes us who we are, to go and expose them in the museum and making money out of it. And that's been going on it happened between 1890 until 1960, when the country became independent. For all that time, they've been using those pieces, exposing them in the museum, making money out of it, and making people to come and pay and watch and come and admire those pieces. But at the same time, our countries, people are starving. People don't have nothing. I think the first thing that we need to do is to work on our mind, to move ourselves from that belief that colonization and slavery is where we all started from. It's for us to go back and dig again into our ancestry history, for us to understand who we are as human beings, and to remember that we're powerful people, that we are kings and queens, and we can make a difference in this world. Because when you look at it, Africans don't have a history of invading other countries. Africans don't have a history of coming and stealing other people's culture and destroying things. We don't have that in our culture. Africans are very welcoming. And the second thing I need to tell Africans today is there's nothing wrong being welcoming. It's good. We show that we are human beings and we respect and have consideration for other people. But this time we have to be very careful. Let's not be gullible, because the world is changing, and the Western world, because they love Africa without the African, to tell you the truth. Africa without the Africans is beautiful for them, because they need our natural resources. Africa is a beautiful continent. We need to tell Africans that the times where you were so gullible and people could just bring in some bottles of rum and then take away all your culture and change your mind and everything, and change the way you see the way you then see yourself, those days are over. It's time for us to say, yes, we're going to welcome you in that continent, but under our own terms. Let's become partners. Let's make it a win-win situation. You don't come there to tell us what we should do. We will tell you what we want to do. That's why it's important for Africans to write their own history. we have to write our own history and then tell the world what we want. But for that, it comes again to a unified Africa. Until we get that unity between us, it will not happen. So we need to hold, to have summits where our leaders sit together. And of course, we include the grassroots, because it has to be an inclusive process when everybody has the right to say, because we're talking about a destiny, for everybody to come and give their opinion, not like a national conference where we start from each country. We talk about what we can do to make Africa great again. And then we expand it to the rest of the continent. We have to speak the same language in order for us to be seen as people who are responsible in the eyes of the world. Because right now, and we see that for all Black people around the world, for some reason, we are not being considered as a right value. People here are people who are, we are here just to be just to make numbers. But we have a role to play, and we have to actually act in order for us to take the place, the space that we actually deserve to have.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, let me ask you this question. Share a few examples on how we can become innovative with our change.
We shouldn't be scared to be creative. We should not be afraid to do that, because we have ideas. We saw that with COVID-19 because there was nothing coming from the rest of the world. We saw Madagascar, they came up with a solution. So we can become creative, because African, we have brains, we have doctors, we have professors, we have people, we are scientists. So why can't we make it happen for yourself? So it's important for us to be creative again, and especially to believe in ourselves, to know that we can do it. Until we start believing in ourselves, it's going to be difficult for us to act, to take action. And the rest of the world doesn't want Africa to take action. They always want us to refer to them, to tell them, to ask them what we need to do. We don't want that anymore. We have to start behaving like big boys, to do things ourselves, to know that we're capable to doing things. And when you come to think of it, if only Africa could get the act together, they won't even need the rest of the world. The world will need us. And we have to come to that point and to tell the world that you need us, but will not behave the way you did. Because what is so frightening for the world today, but if Africa gets the act together, we won't be able to have access to the natural resources. That's not the case. We know that this is a big, the world is a big village. We are all together. If Africa is prosperous, it's going to be good for the United States, for Europe, it's going to be good for everybody. So it's our best interest as human species to see how we can help each other. We can help one another to grow, and that's going to be good for all of us. So creativity,
this is
and
good.
Believing in ourselves, that's so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the narrative. I love when we think about that. I want you to share with the listening and viewing audience about your concept and initiative of Africa, Heaven on Earth.
Everything started some time back when I thought, my goodness, Africa is such a beautiful continent. And I told myself, yeah, that's true. Africa is a heaven on earth. Africa is indeed a heaven on earth. But the problem that we have right now, there's a disconnect between that Africa that is a heaven on earth and the people of Africa. So we need to come to the point when we reconcile ourselves with the continent, the motherland. Like I said in another interview, Africa is a mother that's crying for her children. She's been crying for so long, and she's waiting for her children to come and wipe her tears. She's waiting. She wants those kids to come, those children to come. It's up to us as Black people, and I extend it to the rest of the world, to every single Black people, to understand that Africa needs us. So it's key for us to see how we can make it happen. So the concept I put in place, Africa, a heaven on earth continent, led me to create this show that's called the New African Conversation, because I believe that we need to have a new narrative in Africa in order to make things, to start changing things, to get things moving. And this is actually based, what I want to, that's why I talked about education, which is key in this process, I put in place a concept called the Greatness Trilogy, which is made up of 3 key elements: leadership, fitness, and spirituality. Let me start by the third one. Spirituality is so important because this is the element that will keep us rooted into our continent, to understand that our motherland needs us. It's so important. Africa is a spiritual continent. I wouldn't say that Africa is a religious continent. I would say Africa is a spiritual continent, because we didn't need white men to come to Africa to teach us about spirituality. The second element is fitness. Fitness not only in terms of being fit physically, it is important because we need to be strong. And then history shows that the people who were taken across to the Americas were the strongest, because they could see the people who came to steal our people could see that they could only take strong people and go and work in those fields. So being fit physically is so important, but at the same time, we have to be fit mentally. How can we feed ourselves with the right knowledge in order for us to start believing in ourselves? Like I said earlier on, we have to be creative and we have to believe in ourselves, and that it takes knowledge to do that. And that knowledge has to come from our own people, from Africans. We have leaders in Africa, we have such wisdom in them. We could start actually tapping into those resources to start learning about our history in order for us to know who we are and where we want to go. And the last element is leadership. The first one is leadership, which is so important because it takes leaders to make things change. We need to have people, and when I talk about leaders, I'm not talking about the president or the prime minister. I'm talking about every single African, all 1.2 billion of us. We are all leaders because God created us to come on this planet Earth, on that continent, on the heaven on earth continent, for a mission. So it's important to help every single African to know what is his mission in his own sphere of influence. You could be a janitor in the office. How do you exemplify your leadership skills in what you do? And when you start doing that, you start seeing that you start having a heart of service. Well, you know what I do is because I want to be, to help people around me. I want to be of use to someone else. You start detaching yourself from your selfish interest to start thinking about everybody's interest, the global interest. That's what we need to do. So leadership, fitness, and spirituality are the 3 elements of the program that I offer to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, folks, I hope that you have been picking up what has been put down right here on the State of Civility Summit Africa. We have had some of the most dynamic world leaders on board speaking to you about civility, speaking to you about solutions, imparting wisdom, and just literally laying it on the line. What I challenge each and every one of you to do, if you're watching and you're just joining, or you're going to be watching the replay, is to share this information with others who you know need to hear it. I am thankful and grateful to have had each and every one of you on the State of Civility Summit Africa. Together, we can all do better. Together, we can bring about change that will change the narrative of our world.
Yeah.
Humanity, above all else, brings about civility, which is the engine for our world. I am grateful and thankful, Dr. Charles, to have you on. It's always a pleasure when we get to dialogue and share ideas. But once again, I'm grateful to share this platform with others so that they can see and they can also hear civility on a 360-degree angle and sphere, because life without civility is simply death. But life with civility is glorious. And when we get to the place where civility is our engine, life becomes sweeter and sweeter. So I want to say thank you once again, my friend, for being on. It is always a pleasure. As we get ready to close out, I salute you and the work that you are doing and ask that you continue to press forward. There is much work for us to do. We are changing the world together. And as you said, be creative and believe in ourselves. Thank you once again, Dr. Charles.
Thank you so much, Professor Vernet. It was a pleasure to be on this platform. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And really, I salute you and I thank you and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for what you do to change the world. Thank you.
Absolutely, my friend. And we will talk soon about Civility360, the platform, as we bring all civility solutions to our platform. Why? Because we are better together. We can all do better. And when we pool our resources, when we pool our momentum, we get further faster than we ever could alone. So Definitely. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So you've been listening to the State of Civility Summit Africa. You've heard from some of the great leaders of Africa. And what we ask you to do is make sure that you tie in to the solutions that you heard today, that you begin to ask yourself, how can I be part of the solution? Let me share this with you. We have a solution and you are part of that solution. I want to share with you guys a few things from this week. We have done some phenomenal work. And when I say phenomenal, I mean phenomenal. Together, we have created change all throughout the earth. I waited until the State of Civility Summit Africa to announce to the world that today is the National Day for Productive Business Civility. Today, June 13th, is the National Day for Productive Business Civility. And what does that actually mean? We can all be civil. We need to do better. We all need to bring our best to the workforce. And when we understand, watch this, that people are just as important as business, that is when we can start to move and bring the narrative forward. The other thing that I want to share with you is what we created today. It's the State of Civility Summit Africa. We want to have conversations with you. If you have solutions that you can bring to the table for Africa and every other continent, we are here and we are prepared to discuss that with you. We want to share with you what matters most. And then for all of you who had chimed in this past week with Phoenix Civility Day, we are grateful and thankful to you for your videos and how you support Phoenix Civility Day. Why? Because we are bringing civility to the entire world. We want civility here, there, and everywhere. All the time, we want to be talking about civility. Why? Because the civility is the engine that literally transforms our world. There's so much more that has been going on this week, but I want to share this one thing for all leaders who are watching today and will be watching the replay. And that is this. There is a book that was written by Dr. Clyde Rivers, Sir Clyde Rivers. It's called The Making of a World Changer. And I challenge you to grab this book in whatever form you need. This book is talking to you from the top levels of the world, teaching you how to be effective in your dialogue. And there are so many people who have been affected by the work that Sir Clyde Rivers is doing, has done, and will continue to do. Again, Civility360 is our platform to teach the world how to be civil. I am grateful. I am honored to be a part of the civility movement in our world today. And with that said, I want to say thank you to all of those who were on the platform today for the State of Civility Summit Africa. We look forward. Again, we've got the State of Civility Europe. We've got the State of Civility Caribbean. We've got many, many more things coming up. And as we continue to speak to the racial tension that is going on in our world today, you are part of the solution. You can no longer be silent. You have to use your voice to make a difference in the world. So thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone. Thank you for all the civility shows that literally played today. Thank you for everyone who is bringing their best to the world. As we continue, let's remember this one statement: we can all do better. As we do our part, we can all do better. Blessings, peace, and productivity and civility to you all. Thank you so much for watching. And please, ma'am, please, sir, share and repost as you will. You will look for watch this, an international interview and article that will come out in a few days on this State of Civility Summit Africa. And we look forward to changing the world together. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessings to you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. And again, civility is the key to it all. Have a great day, folks.